You know, in my family, we used to have a saying, you can't be a hero in your own block. You know, you could be a hero to the rest of the world, but when you come back to the place where you live, you have to do a little bit more. Now, many of you may not know it, but I was all of 16 when my parents left the ancestral home in Belrose, Queens, and moved to what was then known as Huntington Station, but which eventually became Dix Hills as the real estate people got into it. And so I'm here tonight, and I have some very strict critics. I have two of my nephews, I have my sister, I have my brother-in-law. There's a gentleman here, Mr. Walters, who was a member in my parents' church over in Melville, Sweet Hollow Presbyterian Church. What a name. It's enough to make you go back to church almost. So as I say, I'm not just appearing here before my usual crowd of adoring, what would I say? What did he say? Proud to be a socialist? Yes. So I'm going to talk to you, and as I realize we're taking small bites tonight so that the children don't get too restless. As the little girl in front of me, I know she's saying boring, there are a couple of things that I just did want to talk to you about. The first thing I want to do is say a big thank you, because I haven't been out here since before my sentencing, and you know, the thing that made a federal judge able to say no to a government who was demanding a 30-year sentence was the outpouring from people. There was not only an outpouring at rallies around the time of the sentencing, but there also was the people who had sat down over 2.5 years and written the judge a letter. All of these letters were not the same. We told people, please don't do a form letter and just sign it, because we don't think the judge would even bother with that. We asked people to write their own letter, even if it was, I went to the Cinema Arts in Huntington and I heard Lynne Stewart speak, and it seems to me this is a case that's overreaching. Better than those were the letters, of course, that came from my ex-clients, some of whom said, you really want me to write a letter? You know, I'm doing hard time up here at Comstock, Dannemora. You really want me to write a letter to the judge? And I would write back and I would say, I do, because you are my life's work. You are the people I represent. You are the person who may have been convicted but still understands what it's about, that you have to have a lawyer you trust, that you have to have a lawyer you feel is in your corner fighting for you at all times. So I had those letters. Then I had the letters just from people who have known me all my life, my friends from high school, some from elementary school, and some postmarked Huntington, Northport, Dix Hills. So I want to say thank you for all those letters, because the judge clearly was very, very moved by them. And he was moved enough so that the government, who wanted to give me 30 years for their view of aiding terrorism, which I still maintain and will always maintain, was doing the work of a lawyer in the way it should be done. These letters came into this judge, and I think they opened him up to the notion that I was not the person that the government wanted to portray me as. Certainly the way the press has made me out, and I want to say just once, and it's not for all, because it will keep on being repeated, and you check it out, every time they write about me, they say, Lynne Stewart, who carried messages from her client to a terrorist organization in Egypt. Carried messages. Well, I want you all to know, here's the big news, that what they proved was I made a press release. I made a press release, and it was a press release to Reuters, definitely an underground organization, am I right? That this press release was printed in just about every newspaper in the Middle East. So this image that they have given people of the lawyer going into the jail, hiding it underneath her, no, that was not true. I did what I have done for many, many clients, and that is publicize their cause, publicize their case, keep them alive because they are still participating in the real world. There's many, many things I can say about my case and how it happened that I was convicted, because people say, well, if that's true, how come you're up there and you're still facing 28 months, which the judge gave you? Well, you know, the government put on a very heavy-handed trial. They had images of bin Laden paraded before that jury, images that were as big as this black curtain behind me. And of course, when they would bring out these images, the judge would say, this evidence is not introduced against Lynne Stewart. This evidence is not introduced against Mohammed Yusri. It is not introduced for the truth of the matter. It is only introduced as to the state of mind of the third defendant. But you know, he is the image that we all associate with 9/11. Everyone on that jury had their own 9/11 story to tell. They were all from New York. Everyone there was sitting in a jury box that was not a mile from ground zero. You cannot put an image like Osama on a screen and then say to a jury, forget about this. It's just like, as one of the old-time lawyers say, if you throw a skunk in the jury box, you can't tell the jury, don't smell it. It's there. And it's a taint, and it's a signal from the government. This is what we're protecting you from. Be afraid. Go with us. We are your best hope. And of course, that is what the jury did. And that, of course, that is why I am facing the 28-month sentence that the judge gave me. We are appealing that. The appeal is underway. I don't think it'll be heard for probably quite a while, I hope. Mainly because the times are changing also. And the very thing that got people out there on that day in October when I was sentenced, the thing that had people waiting in Tom Paine Park across from the courthouse to hear what that sentence was going to be, that had judges calling up, a friend of mine called up her friend to say, what's the sentence? From her telephone underneath her judicial dais. And then she would look up and she would say, sustained, objection sustained. People wanted to know what was happening. I think that that was the real focus that moved things from square one to square two. And I can tell you when that judge said, not only has Lynne Stewart been of great service to her client for the past 30 years, she has been of great service to the nation. I just want you all to know, I really couldn't believe my ears that there was a federal judge saying this about me. In this circumstance, as he's about to sentence me for terrorism, he is saying I was of great service to the nation. But you know, I believe that John Codal read every one of the letters that came in. And he read them, and he realized who I was, what my life had been about, and he honored me in that way. We have a newsletter over there. It reprints 3 of the letters that were sent in. If you didn't get one, and if you want to get on the mailing list, I guess eventually we'll get out a sign-in sheet. But there are 3 letters that we chose to put in there. Well, first one is from my grandson, Ernesto, 14 years old. Yes, don't smile, Ernesto. You know why. And Ernesto wrote, Dear Judge, do not send my grandmother to jail. She is too old. And she is too good. When I read that letter, I said, that really does say it all, doesn't it? Too old and too good to go to jail. The second letter was from a client, young Italian-American fellow, in and out of jail from the time he was 16 years old, a horrendous background, a lot of abuse, a lot of abandonment in his life. Always, he would come back to me. Always, I would try to get with him, get him to do something more positive. Let's avoid this. Let's not go back to jail, Jimmy. But Jimmy very often did go back to jail until he happened to luck up, and he got into a drug program. You know, there are no programs as such. You have to be in a drug program to get any kind of real help. So Jimmy was in a drug program in Newark, New Jersey, when he happened to run into a professor from, now help me with the name. Farley Dickinson. And the professor said, you know, you're a very bright guy. I'd like to see how you do in college, and got him some scholarship. And he went to college, and he was making straight A's. He was really all that we ever hoped he would be. That bright, that good. And then September 11th came, and his mother was on the 102nd floor of the tower, and she died. And after he knew she wasn't coming home that day, Jimmy was on the phone to me at home, and we stayed on the phone all week. And Jimmy wrote a letter to the judge, and he said, I don't think that the woman that was on the phone to me, who helped me so, could possibly be guilty of what she has been convicted of. And I would ask that you show her great leniency. Jimmy's letter is in the newsletter as well. But it's the third letter that I think is most remarkable because it's written by a woman who was the deputy under Janet Reno in Clinton's administration in the Department of Justice in charge of the criminal division. And this letter, which is a little bit longer, says, Judge, you're the last one who can stop this terrible injustice. This is from a woman who has been a prosecutor all of her professional life. This is from a woman who basically you would think would have not a good thing in the world to say about my case. But you see, this woman understands what the process is about. And the judge ultimately understood what the process has to be about. And she, when she said that, she was saying, we need lawyers like Lynne Stewart. And she said by analogy, and Bill Kunstler, and Elizabeth Fink, and all that band of political lawyers who will take on cases where the government is clearly in the wrong. Not just, you know, we will fight for our clients, which we also do for the everyday pedestrian crimes, but for those which have a government interest attached to them. Those are the cases that we do, and we do with our hearts and souls. I was out in Seattle, and they asked me, you know, if you could take a case, 2 cases right now, what would those cases be? I said, well, I'd like to try the San Francisco 8. That's a case where they've rounded up these ancient warriors of the Black Panther Party and the BLA, tortured one of them, extracted a confession, and now have the other 8 of them on trial for the murder of a policeman that took place almost 40 years ago. And I'd like to be doing that case because, you know, those fellows are political. This is a political trial. This is a case that will be tried on the politics of the situation. So boy, would I love to be doing that case. And the other one is different, but somehow the same. It would be the one that came out of Miami, 3 or 4 young African Americans, Haitian Americans, who were going to go blow up the Sears Tower. Huh? Well, they were going to do it, or the informant that wrestled them into this position and promised them $5,000 for boots and trucks and untold equipment. Somebody was planning to blow up the Sears Tower, but it wasn't them. These are guys from out of a ghetto that is known as Liberty City. And I said, there's another case. And actually, when we were not having this terrible oppressive weight upon us, my husband Ralph would have been down in Miami and would have been talking to the parents and the people in that case and saying, you need some lawyers to really fight here. You know, if you want us to take it on, we can get some lawyers from New York, but you have to let us know whether you want us to do that. And I would have been in New York rounding up the usual suspects, the Michael Warrens, as I said, the Liz Finks, the people who have fought these cases and done so successfully. But the government knew that too, that that's what I'd be doing. So although I don't want to say, yes, I was a target, I do want you to consider that, yes, I was definitely a target. Last week I participated in a reading, some of you attended, of Clarence Darrow, of his summations in his greatest cases. And I, of course, read his own summation that he gave in a case where he was targeted by the government. And he said, I don't have the script here with me, but he said words to the effect, I'm not here because I committed a crime. I'm here because I defended the weak, the oppressed, the hopeless. And to some degree, that is true of me too. He also said I was pursued by as cruel a gang as ever came after anyone. And I too can say that. Ashcroft, who went on David Letterman the night of my arrest, to ballyhoo his greatness, his strength, and to sing his silly song. The eagle soared that night, I guess, but where is Ashcroft these days anyway? I hope he's reading parking meters out in Sioux City, Iowa or something. But not to denigrate, he had a lot of power, and he certainly used it to get through that Patriot Act and to tell Congress that if they didn't vote for it, they were helping the enemy. That's how he saw the world. But here I am tonight. I still have those 28 months somewhere looming. We are hoping we can get this whole thing turned around, change it. I can get back to doing what I do best. I still have a few good trials left in me, and that we will once again be able to go forward. You know, before I came over here, a friend of mine had called me, and he said, oh, you're going to be out in Huntington. You know, my mother lives in Huntington. She lives over on New York Avenue. She's 96 years old, and she would just love it if you could come by and visit her. So Ralph and Dolphy and I, we stopped by to see Bea, the wife of a doctor who had practiced out of this same house just south of the railroad station. Beautiful, big, white, clapboard house. And Bea said to us as we were leaving, she says, you know, as long as you as long as you have a purpose, you don't think about dying. As long as you have a purpose. And so people say, well, what do you want us to do now? What are we to do now? And I can only say one thing, what you can do, what we all can do, what we all do as well as we can, in whatever group we can do it, is agitate, agitate, agitate. I come from a tradition that says, you know, we'll put together a great big huge movement and the government won't be able to resist us and we'll be able to force them to do the right thing because they will be so worried about losing that they will have to do the right thing. I'm now coming to think that maybe if we put together lots of little movements, lots of grassroots, lots of people who do have an individual cause to carry, but understand that there is a greater evil up there that really is controlling us or trying to control or forcing or whatever word you choose to use. That is what we have to confront. That is what we have to overcome. And I'm going to say this, I may antagonize some of you, but I don't think that evil is Republican or Democrat. I think it's both. I have 0 minutes, so I'm going to read a poem because that is one of the things I do. I love poetry. I think it speaks to us in a way that is distilled joy, distilled energy. So I'm going to read to you from Arundhati Roy. Okay. Our strategy should be not only to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it with our art, our music, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy, our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, and our ability to tell our own stories. Stories that are different from the ones we're being brainwashed to believe. The corporate revolution will collapse if we refuse to buy what they are selling. Their ideas, their version of history, their wars, their weapons, their notion of inevitability. Remember this. We be many, they be few. They need us more than we need them. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Thank you.